Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the King and Pocket Aces Fantasy Show, brought to you by rotoballer.com. I'm one of your hosts, Pocket Aces, Anthony Aniano, and joining me as he does each and every week, the king of fantasy sports, Mr. Scott Engel. Scotty, how are we doing today, my friend?
Stressed, man. It's
stressed.
I'm feeling crazy with like all these NBA injuries, playing havoc with my lineups, etc. And then later this week, I got more issues because, you know, if the Mets and the Knicks play on the same night, what am I going to do here?
You're going to watch the Mets. Yeah, I'm going to guide you through that.
But the Knicks are playing well too, and there's less games, and you know it's deeper into the season.
You need to just set up a couple of TVs, split it, and do what you got to do. But
that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
It's opening day. We're the week of opening day. I mean, there's one. It should be a holiday opening day, and it is upon us, which means our fantasy drafts for our baseball season are wrapping up. Our NFBCs are wrapping up. Wednesday night we have the Rotoballer League draft. That's always a fun night. But you know, all the prep work is coming to an end, and now we're already thinking about waiver moves, about FAAB budgets. TGFBI's FAAB has already run for the first time. And before we get into a specific position,
my National League only waivers ran Sunday night too. And that's more stress, like just trying to find friggin' at bats. That's the biggest challenge with a mono.
With an only.
Like, you really telling me I'm gonna have to start Eric Sogard?
Yeah, you are. I mean, but let me ask you this. Before we get into it, today, guys, we're going to talk a lot about closers and planning your bullpen for the fantasy season. And really, guys, head over to rotoballer.com. Before I even ask Scott my question, head to rotoballer.com and obviously sign up for that MLB premium package, DFS season long, guide you through the whole season. Great stuff there. Scott does some great articles for the MLB season. I'll be putting videos out for the waiver wire throughout the MLB season. And really, one of the articles we're focusing on today is the MLB closers and saves depth chart, which is constantly being updated. So make sure you check that out as well. Sign up with that premium code KING, letting them know Scott sent you, or ACES, letting them know Anthony sent you. But Scott, I got to ask you this question. I saw TGFBI waivers went. The SiriusXM IDP League, money was spent, myself included, which is a little different than what I usually do. But nonetheless.
Wait, you have an IDP baseball league?
Not IDP, Dynasty League, 40-team Dynasty. It's the same amount of players in my Sirius IDP League.
I was about to say, you know, I thought I was a super dork, you know.
How conservative or how aggressive are you this time of year and through early April when it comes to waivers or more specifically FAAB budgets? If the player's there, are you spending, or are you the type of guy who kind of, this is the team I drafted and I'm going to roll with them a little bit before I make any major changes?
I think it depends on need. Because in my Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational, you know, we drafted a little bit earlier. So necessarily, and so then out of $1,000, I went 111 on Gregory Soto, and I went about 42 on Kevin Newman because I needed a pitcher, and I really needed a shortstop because Hae-Sung Kim is just not making the adjustment to Major League pitching yet. I believe he was hitting about 120 about the time when I was made the move in spring training. And he's athletic enough to make the adjustments from the baseball people I speak to, but it's very hard to handle that high 90s fastball coming over from the KBO. So then Kevin Newman hitting 714 at the time I picked him up. You know, that guy could, if you're still drafting or if he's available in free agency and you have a middle infielder, he's a really good pickup, I think. You know, he can give you 15 steals and maybe 12 to 14 homers. Something like that, if he plays as well as he did in the spring. Could be a lost year for him last season. So, you know, that's a name to keep in mind, you know, if you need some middle infield help. But, you know, in a long-winded Scott Engel way of answering your question, there's no one set strategy for me. There was another league where I really didn't make any significant moves. So it really depends on what I need.
Fair enough. Like for me in the TGFBI, I didn't make any moves. I held tight with my roster. But in that SiriusXM Dynasty League, I did spend a lot on Jordan Romano, the presumed closer for the Toronto Blue Jays. He was there. I went aggressively for him because this is a Dynasty format. I paid big for him now and see if he, ends up assuming the save role now with Kirby Yates out with Toronto. But I agree with you. It all kind of depends on the format of the league. And, Scott, there are other spots too.
You mentioned Jordan Romano. And if he's out there, you have to go for him because I think you and a lot of other fantasy players have the same approach. I'm not going to spend up in a salary cap draft for closers, really. I really never do. And I'm gonna find them off the waiver wire. Mm-hmm. Gregory Soto was somebody who really nobody drafted, and I'm convinced he's going to be the closer in Detroit.
Yeah, I have him in the same league, and that's just it. You can add closers throughout the league if you're willing to be somewhat aggressive with your FAAB. Now, you've had to be aggressive too, right? If you had Eloy Jimenez, if you had Luke Voigt, maybe you had to be more aggressive than you wanted to off the waiver wire at this point early. Spring training injuries.
It's about need. You
have to. If there's a first baseman
bat,
right? So you needed to spend and probably spend more than you wanted to at this point in the year to fill that need. But Scott, I wanted to talk with you today about closers, and you kind of already gave your hint there. On your drafts, throughout your drafts this month of March and even earlier, did you invest, is there a Josh Hader or a Liam Hendriks on a Scott Engel team, or are we seeing you do what we just described? Work the waiver wire, draft a couple of guys late. How do you handle that save category? I don't like to call it the closer position. How do you handle the save category when it comes to your fantasy drafts?
Yeah, no Josh Hader, no Hendriks on my team. I do have Brad Hand on one team because he was lasting a round or two longer than I felt he should. But you're just going to see a lot of Gregory Soto, Yimi Garcia, guys like that, that I'm hoping that are going to close. I'll chase saves and I'll spend elsewhere. Or I'll draft it at other positions. In one league that I'm in, my biggest high stakes league, in the final round, I got Lucas Sims, and now we're hearing reports there might be a closer committee in Cincinnati. So I wasn't willing to spend up. James Karinchak was going in the as early as the 8th round, and now we're hearing about a closer committee in Cleveland. So the same thing, Nick Whittegren going 25th, 27th round, and now he might be sharing the job with Karinchak in Cleveland. So to me, it's not worth it to spend up.
Well, let's break down a couple of teams, and we're going to go division by division here, right? And again, utilizing the Rotoballer saves and closer depth chart, right? We know what the Yankees have.
Constantly updated on
constantly updated. One of the best features, I think, for baseball season on Rotoballer.com. Legitimately updates every single day. All right.
Yeah, part of our season pass, enter King at checkout for a special discount.
There it is. Now, Yankees are Aldis Chapman. We know he's going to close. Let's talk Boston. Matt Barnes, had a COVID positive diagnosis. That now has come out saying it was basically a false positive. He's back. Adam Ottavino acquired from the Yankees. Again, could have been a late draft pick, a waiver wire ad. Is Ottavino a pitcher you're willing to pluck in hopes that it's even a platoon type of situation?
Yeah, he is, because, at some point we might see Matt Barnes traded by the Red Sox. And, he may have better swing and miss stuff than Matt Barnes. So you always have to speculate. It's all about how much room do you have on your bench right now. And it depends on, there's no sweeping generalization. Okay, am I going to pick him up? Am I not going to pick him up? If I'm speculating on closers like I often am, yes. But it depends on who I already have. If I'm stashing Lucas Sims, and I say to myself, Sims I might get the chances. So It really depends on availability for my roster. You've seen it, Bronx Tale. Sonny, he talked about availability, about how important it is. I got to be available. Everybody in the neighborhood has to see me. But my point being is I have to prioritize, and you have to prioritize. If you're watching or listening, which closers you're going to stash, because who's going to get the opportunity quicker? A guy like Sims is going to get it quicker than somebody like Ottavino.
Yes. Now, Toronto, we mentioned Jordan Romano looks like the guy who could be it for Kirby Yates being out. There are other people there, but I do think Romano will be there. But staying in the AL East, you have the Baltimore Orioles, Cesar Valdez, Tanner Scott, and even the Tampa Bay Rays. Nick Anderson was going to be the guy, but now he's going to be out for a while. Both of those situations, Baltimore just not very good, so who knows how many save situations there will be. So I'm not personally looking to invest there. I don't see myself getting, you're giving me the finger, but let me finish. Okay? Nobody from Baltimore I see finishing with 20 saves, so I'm not overly investing. And then my second question to you, I'm doubling up on this in the AL East. Tampa Bay Rays, the way they manage that pitching staff, can we ever think there's going to be a quote-unquote closer on that team?
Okay, first on Baltimore. Let's see how well Tanner Scott pitches with Hunter Harvey out. As we've seen, and I call it the old Ugueth Urbina rule from the Expos, if you remember him, sometimes on bad teams, closers will get a decent amount of saves because those teams will tend to win a lot of close games when they win. Then in Tampa Bay, you're talking either Diego Castillo or Pete Fairbanks. Mm-hmm. We've seen Castillo do it before, but management there, I agree with you. I don't think, even if one of those two pitchers shows they have more blow-away stuff, that they're going to play more matchups. The Rays are the team that originally created the opener as a starter. So, of course, they're very likely to make some match relievers.
Yeah, I mean, if this is a team that wouldn't let their starters go more than 5 innings, I don't think they're locking themselves into a situation where every single night who's pitching the 9th inning. I just don't think. Scott, let me ask you another question before we go on with closers. The way the game has changed, are you more in favor of a save plus hold format or sticking with the traditional save format?
I'm used to playing with the traditional save format, but I'm not against save and holds. I'm not throw either type of scoring system with me, and I think it's good, but it makes it more challenging just to have the saves. If you're going saves and holds, then all of a sudden the player pool becomes a lot deeper and it's less challenging. And fantasy baseball is more challenging in that regard than any other fantasy sport in terms of scarcity in finding the stats that you need. And when you just have saves like that and you don't have holds, it makes the whole exercise of trying to get those stats tougher.
Yeah, it's fair. It's just it's becoming like stolen bases potentially, where saves are just going to be very difficult to come by on a consistent basis from the same players. Scott, a couple of teams in the American League Central. You mentioned Gregory Soto, and I agree 100% with you. I have him in formats as well. Talk about a last round or waiver wire ad for potential saves.
I got him in the first round of my reserve draft in Tout Wars.
Yeah. I agree. I have him in my tout draft and hold as my third closer or fourth closer. It was in the reserve rounds. I think it was after round 30. It was a tremendous opportunity there. Now, in Cleveland, though, James Karinchak was the guy, but this is huge development. And you mentioned it. People were drafting him within the first 10 rounds of drafts, and now we're 2 days from opening day, and we're potentially in a committee situation because Karinchak's having control issues all spring long. This is why you're hesitant to invest in closers early, Scott.
Yeah, it's a command issue that's dated back to his days in the minors. And with Karinchak, is it really the control, or is it how the manager wants to play things? Because Karinchak is a guy who comes in, he's like Rob Dibble. He comes in dominant and deceptive. And even if he walks somebody or he puts two runners on, he could punch out the next three.
Right.
So, maybe no runs will score on him. But the other part of it is okay, there's a concern about control, but maybe we want to bring in Karinchak and his tremendous swing and miss stuff an inning or two earlier for high leverage situations. We're seeing this more and more across baseball, where they'll bring the closer type in for a high leverage situation. It'll really screw us fantasy, but that's something, a situation that we're probably going to have to consider here with James Karinchak. It's not just the control, it's a consideration of, okay, do they want to use him in a more high leverage situation early in the game?
When you mentioned the control, last season Karinchak walked over 5 batters per 9 innings. That is a dangerous number for a closer. There's no doubt about it. Now, what saved him is he doesn't give up home runs. Last season, it was 0.33 homers per 9 innings. Okay, but at the same time, Scott, he struck out last season 49% of the batters he faced. 17.7 Ks per 9 innings, just an astronomical number. But this is what you're getting. He's going to walk batters. He's going to strike out batters. He's going to keep the ball in the yard. At least he did last season. Opposing hitters only hit 151 against him. But the truth is, you put him in with a runner, in a situation, second and third, 1 out, he's just as liable to strike out the side and get you out of that mess, or walk the first two batters he faces and force in a run. That's the issue with that type of control.
Yeah, but just the stuff is just tremendous swing and miss stuff. Last year, he tied a major league record for highest Ks per 9, minimum 25 innings pitched in a season. So
yeah. Now, other teams in that division, the Kansas City Royals are starting the season with Greg Holland. Okay, Scott Barlow, Jesse Hahn are there in the mix. Is Greg Holland like a Gregory Soto type of situation for you? That third reliever that you take in the reserve round, somebody late who, at the very least, will give you some saves early in the season, and if he blows up, and you can replace him on the waiver wire?
The guy you need to ask about Greg Holland is Rotoballer's Jamie Steed. Jamie, like a lot of our other writers, did their fantasy bold predictions of Rotoballer, and you have to read his because he believes Greg Holland's actually going to finish as a top 5 closer.
Wow.
He's that confident in him. And Jamie Steed actually lives in the United Kingdom and actually plays like sort of semi-professional ball over there. He's a 3-time pitcher of the year. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to, mound work. And to me, here's something that I know about Holland. Now, everybody, Rotoballer, and in the industry does a great job of crunching the numbers, but having media access, I like to, for the last decade plus, I like to look at the intangible side of things. When I talk to people inside the game, there is definitely a closer's mentality. It's a different type of animal in the 9th inning. If you talk to a pitcher and he tells you it's not any different for me, that's because he responds to that sort of high pressure the same as he does others. But for others, like talking to guys in the past like Jonathan Papelbon, et cetera, and other relievers, they tell you that, the 9th inning is a different animal, especially for a lot of pitchers. And you have to have that closer mentality. I've seen pitchers who have the stuff over the years, but they don't have the mentality to maintain it in the 9th inning. And Greg Holland not only has the stuff, he also has the mentality. So I think he's locked in. If you're able to get him late as a good closer, I think he should be very comfortable.
Going to be interesting to see what happens with Holland. His first go-around with Kansas City, he was one of the most dominant closers in baseball from 2013 to 2017. Okay, over 40 saves each season. He had a couple of seasons where the ERA was under 1.5. Kind of blew up when he left and went to Colorado and then Arizona. It wasn't great, but last season returned to Kansas City and returns with a 1.91 ERA, almost 10 Ks per 9 innings. And here was the key, right? He had some down seasons where he was walking over 4 batters, 5 batters, even 6 batters per 9 innings. Goes back to Kansas City last year, gets that walk rate right about 2 walks per 9 innings. It's a key for any closer, Scott. You and I have lived through Armando Benitez. We know what wildness does. It just explodes on a pitcher in no time. Scott, the other team that's had some volatility at the closer position is now the Texas Rangers. Jose Leclerc getting Tommy John surgery. Now they have 2 non-roster invitees in Ian Kennedy, who closed for Kansas City a couple of years ago and was effective, Matt Bush, who was out of baseball the last year or two. They are the guys there. Is there any trust you have with this Texas Rangers bullpen right now, heading into opening day and potential waiver wire ads?
Throwing darts, my friend. That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing in Texas.
Throwing darts.
I'm glad you said it.
Matt Bush may have the stuff, but he's had off-field issues before, Anthony. Ian Kennedy's 36 years old, I believe, but he's done it before. This is a situation that's going to have to play itself out as we go along. It's going to be hard to predict. And for all we know, it might be one of these situations that some guy who we're not even discussing right now and is not even on the radar could come out and end up closing, or they might have to pick up a closer from another team. This is probably the most unpredictable closer situation in fantasy baseball right now.
I agree. Scott, let's swing over to the National League East, where arguably the only team that has even a remotely stable closer position is the Washington Nationals with Brad Hand. Daniel Hudson is there. He's picked up some saves. Atlanta, you have Will Smith, you have Chris Martin, who could both accumulate saves this year. The Marlins, Anthony Bass, you mentioned Yimi Garcia earlier. The Mets should, in theory, be solid with Edwin Diaz. Then again, we saw Edwin Diaz 2 years ago. They brought in Trevor May. Seth Lugo eventually gets healthy. And the Philadelphia Phillies added Archie Bradley, but they also have Jose Alvarado and Hector Neris. Okay? To me, this is just more example, other than the Nationals, of teams where you can have multiple players picking up saves throughout the season, Scott. And part of the reason why I don't want to invest early. What is your take here? And do you trust, and this is a big question for us Met fans, do you trust Edwin Diaz this year?
This is very interesting, because my Fantasy Baseball Insider reports, I spoke to a former Major League executive and a former Major League pitcher who have their eye on the Mets, and the cumulative or the overall insider reports that I got on Diaz is that there's no middle ground for him this year, that he's going to be spectacular or he's going to lose his job at some point. Because last year he really turned it around. He struck out 50 batters in 25 and 2/3 innings and only gave up 2 home runs, where we gave up 15 the year before. But it was the first season in New York where he wasn't playing without fans. This was
it is. Said it.
Yes.
Thank you, Scott Engel.
This was a guy that was getting booed when he was coming in. Now, not only do I talk about closer mentality, being able to play in New York is a real thing. Some guys can't handle it mentally. And to me, Edwin Diaz, when he says this spring, well, I feel better about things because I'm going back to my old walk-up song, that shows me he's a little wobbly up here about it.
Yeah,
I've talked to Edwin Diaz. He seems like a soft-spoken sort of guy, nice guy. I want him to play well. I'm rooting for him, obviously, as a Met fan. But the report that I got is that there's no middle ground. He's either going to be elite or he's going to lose his job, because there's going to be a limited amount of Met fans back at Citi Field. And if they boo him and he doesn't take it, the first time or two he gets over a homer, gives up a homer, we could be looking at Trevor May at some point. Or he can finally show that he can handle it. We can't predict mentally what's going to go on. That's the thing that we don't have, advanced metrics for. It's really about how he handles it. if he handles it well, then you have an elite closer on your hands because the stuff is not in doubt. The mentality is what we wonder about. And the rest of the NL East, really quick, what you mentioned, Will Smith is the guy initially. He'll have to prove that he can do it. In Miami, Anthony Bass is the man to start, but Yimi Garcia finished the spring very strong, and I think he has the better stuff. And in Philadelphia, on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio on Rotoballer in the morning last week, we spoke to Matt Gelb of The Athletic, and he really feels that Reese's split finger and his experience really gives him the initial advantage.
Interesting. The thing with Diaz, you said it, he was dominant last year, but you said it, one booing game, one home run late, and it could all very, very easily fall apart. Scott, NL Central, do you trust Craig Kimbrell? Simple question. Do you trust Kimbrell with the Cubs?
Not really. It's when that's why I wait on closers, because I get to a point, the best one left is Kimbrell. 6 years ago I would have been cool with it, but not this year.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. Now, we mentioned the Reds. The Reds are potentially a committee situation. Amir Garrett, Lucas Sims, Sean Doolittle, who's closed before. People invested in Garrett early. Lucas Sims on the waiver wire, though, Scott. Here's a situation right now. I know the first waiver just ran. Grab him for the next one. Lucas Sims potentially there. Pittsburgh right now has Rich Rodriguez slated to close, but Chris Stratton is floating around. But the one that I find
is in the picture too.
Yep. The one I find interesting, though, is the Cardinals. Because Giovanni Gallegos has lights-out stuff. Jordan Hicks is coming back from the Tommy John, but he has lights-out stuff. And we've seen Andrew Miller, I know it was a couple of years ago, but be one of the more dominant relievers in baseball. Is this another situation where it's going to be a matchup and just frustrate the hell out of you as a fantasy player?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Andrew Miller do it unless they get desperate. Gallegos had a bumpy spring, but it is the spring. I think it's going to be Hicks or Gallegos, and one of them is going to have to prove it in the long term. Richard Rodriguez seems like he should be the choice in Pittsburgh, but they've declined to actually come out and name a closer there. So, Rodriguez is the guy that I've drafted in 2 leagues, but I can't tell you full confidence. And Cincinnati's really interesting. Talking to a Reds beat writer recently, don't think that Doolittle's probably in the picture. With Garrett, the thing is, he's such a blowaway lefty.
Yeah.
Do you really want to use him they really want to use him for one specific situation when they can really gain an advantage on those lefty and lefty matchups? So that might end up being a timeshare between Garrett and Sims.
What's going to be something to watch is, does Garrett get more save situations because of the rule change that went into effect last year, where now the pitcher has to face 3 batters anyway, right? Like, you could have used Garrett against the lefty last season and just blow him away and dominate him in the middle of an inning. But now if you got to use him for 3 batters anyway, and there's a lefty, why not save him for the 9th inning potentially? I'm curious to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, that was my point. Not that they were going to bring him in for 1 batter, because we don't do them anymore, but if they're in a situation in the 7th or 8th inning where a very strong lefty is coming up in a key situation, they might lean towards Garrett. If it's a tie game and say the bottom of the 8th and they're at home and
Bryce Harper's coming
very
up.
Strong lefty, like Freddie Freeman is going to lead off the inning or hit in the middle of the inning. They might say, okay, let's use Garrett here.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. They go up against a Yelich, a Freddie Freeman, a Bryce Harper. You use Garrett that inning and let Sims close the game out. General picture, and Scott and I, for everybody listening or watching, understand what's happened here. There are more volatile save situations than there are secure situations, okay, which is very, very interesting. Scott, let's just wrap this up in the NL West. Arizona, we have Soria and Stephen Crichton there. The Rockies have Daniel Bard, 7 years out of the league. He's now pumping 96. Dodgers, Kenley Jensen should have every opportunity to succeed. Padres injuries have beat him up a little bit. Drew Pomeranz, Emilio Pagan, Mark Melancon. Giants, Jake McGee, Tyler Rogers. It's got a whole lot of split save situations once again around the NL West.
Yeah, there certainly is. And it looks like Emilio Pagan's going to be the man in San Diego. I know they signed Mark Melancon, but I think Pagan's going to end up being the guy. Look at Bard is pretty much locked in. I don't know how much you can trust Story, and McGee is going to be the guy. And I'm having a brain freeze right now because there's another pitcher that was mentioned to me in San Francisco. He's coming back from a big injury, and he's got strong stuff, and he might be a deep sleeper, and I can't remember his name right now.
Maranta.
There it is.
Reyes Maranta, yep.
Thank you very much. You know, I was actually talking to a former major leaguer who's a friend of mine, and he's watched Maranta, and he said, you know, this is somebody that, you know, should really be on your radar.
Fair enough. So take a look at that. Scott mentioned Emilio Pagan closing for the Padres. He might be available floating around out there as well. All right, everybody, it's halftime. Head over to rotoballer.com right now. Sign up for that MLB premium package. Use the promo code KING, promo code ACES. Save yourself a little bit of money. And when we return, we're going to talk a little NFL football, some dynasty values right here on the King and Pocket Aces. Welcome back, everybody, to the second half of the King and Pocket Aces. Anthony Aniano, Scott Engel here with you guys. Don't forget, follow Scott on Twitter at Scott E. the King. Follow me at A. Aniano Fantasy. And don't forget, follow rotoballer.com, Rotoballer Radio, the YouTube channel, wherever you listen to the podcasts, and sign up for that MLB or NFL premium package using the promo code KING or ACES, whichever you choose to save yourself a bit of money. Scott, we covered baseball. We're ready for opening day, but football never seems to end. And this week, a big day in the FFPC as Cutdown Day is upon you if you play in their dynasty formats.
Yeah, Cutdown Day, deadline midnight on Wednesday for this week. And for those existing players, for those who want to get into the FFPC, great offer at rotoballer.com/FFPC. You can get a nice discount off of your first FFPC team and draft in Dynasty. And I'm a defending champion in a Superflex Dynasty team, and I'm going to have to make these decisions. And look, you can't keep everybody from last year. There's some easy decisions for me. Phillip Rivers is one of my 3 quarterbacks, but he's going to retire. Now, when it comes down to a tight decision about who I'm going to keep in a dynasty league, I think what it comes down to is I think what a lot of people do is really tend to get hooked into the long term. But, you know, if I have a player who I don't feel is going to contribute this year or maybe even next, or it's really towards this year, he's going to get the axe. You know, the one thing you have to remember is that, you know, it's still about winning this year and of having depth, because you want to have enough guys at a position, because when you, especially if you're playing in a best ball, you know, which I tend to be in, you want to have enough quality depth at that position for players to contribute immediately. So if you're looking at somebody longer term, the more they are of a stash, the more likely are they should visit the FFP Fantasy Turk.
So, Scott, and I agree with you. Like, I always play to win. I try to play to win every year. Eventually, yes, you have to move on from aging veterans and bring in young players. But I think the truly successful fantasy players are kind of able to do both at times. But when you look at that FFPC Dynasty format, Is there any position or is there any strategy you take out of deciding who is, your keeper? Like, for example, you talk about Phillip Rivers, you're going to drop him. Does that mean you try to maintain two quarterbacks on your roster at all times then, or a certain number of people at positions when you look to set that deadline, like you said, on Wednesday?
Well, mine is a super flex. So I have Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and Phillip Rivers. So I'm trying to make a trade for a third quarterback there. Trading is going to come into play as well. But at some point, you have to stop waiting on certain players, to make a significant dent. Now, you look at San Francisco's running back, they got rid of Tevin Coleman, and, they have, maybe you want to keep Jeff Wilson because he might split time this year. But you look in the same division, and Cam Akers is set for a big workload. To me, if I'm on the fence about a cut, I'm not waiting around anymore for Darrell Henderson to, become a starting running back because it's just not going to happen unless there's an injury there. I'm not going to keep a Malcolm Brown. These type of guys that we've continued to speculate on that we've just never really have quite seen it from them. Do I really want to keep a Jamal Williams because he's not going to start for Detroit? At best, he's going to play a complimentary role. So, that's what I'm looking at.
Right.
And with aging veterans too, and this probably won't happen with a lot of FFPC types because they're savvy, but I have no room for an AJ Green. I mean, AJ Green's been done for 2 years now. Mm-hmm. He's going to be another 3 wide receiver. I don't even want him in a seasonal league.
Right. No, that makes a ton of sense. And, that's why you look into now the draft and this year's draft and all the activity that's upcoming. So in that Superflex league, Scott, in a Dynasty Superflex league, which is just a fantastic format, if you ask me, right? I am a huge Superflex guy. Right. But, it's Superflex, which to me restores value to the quarterback position that you don't get in a single QB league. Now you've got the Dynasty aspect of it as well. So when you enter a draft in this type of format, and you mentioned the quarterback position, Russell Wilson, rock solid, Cam Newton, okay, Phillip Rivers, retired. When you enter the draft, are you now prioritizing drafting, and this is going to lead us into our next conversation, one of the rookie quarterbacks that are entering the NFL draft in April?
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at rookies. I'm going to have to look at free agents, et cetera. I might have to think about drafting Andy Dalton in the first round.
No, you won't. You will not do that. You will not do that.
No, I won't.
I will come to your home, and I will not allow you to hit that button.
It was a joke. Okay, did you ever see Bad Santa? It was a joke for us adults, okay?
I got you. All right, I got you. But so let me ask you this, though. Trevor Lawrence in this draft, right? We'll talk about the NFL draft while combining it with this. The presumed number 1 pick in the draft in April, Jacksonville, Urban Meyer has essentially said so. Where do you see him potentially going in your draft for this, like we said, Superflex Dynasty format? Where does a Trevor Lawrence potentially go in this type of format?
Well, I think we have to remember, like, Superflex 2 quarterback, I think he goes top half of the first round. Mm-hmm. But let's see where some of these running backs land, because I think running backs are still going to be very important. And every Superflex draft is different, whether it's a rookie draft or a new draft. I've been in Dynasty League drafts, rookie drafts and Superflexes where sometimes you see quarterbacks go early, but then the next draft, you see a few running backs going before the quarterbacks. So you have to go with the flow. Every draft is different, especially when it comes to Superflex. You can never predict with those first 5 whether there's going to be 3 quarterbacks or 4 running backs. Right. And, it's even harder for us to handicap it before we've actually seen the NFL draft. If you're in a dynasty startup, saying in the FFPC, obviously the veterans are going to go later, but, him being a young quarterback with just some upside, Trevor Lawrence is definitely going to go, say, top 12, I would say. I think he's going to go in that top 12 to top 15 sort of range.
Yeah, I would even think he would go earlier. I mean, if you could lock in
I'm being
Trevor
conservative,
Lawrence.
but there are so many established veteran quarterbacks, and then you look at Matthew Stafford going to the Rams. Quarterback's still deep, but whether it's Superflex or one QB, you still rate him as number 15. He'll go earlier in the draft itself, but he'll still be maybe like the 13th to 15th quarterback off the board.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's continue talking about this NFL draft a little bit. We know there's been a lot of movement at the top end of this. San Francisco 49ers have come out and said, unless they get overwhelmed by an offer, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be their quarterback this year. Yet, at the same time, they are kind of planning on drafting a quarterback at number 3. Now, who that will be, we know it won't be Lawrence, but the Jets have a decision to make. You're going to have Justin Fields available. You'll have Mac Jones available. When you hear that type of news that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to still be the guy, but they're going to draft a quarterback, how does that affect fantasy value for you for a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo in any type of Superflex or Dynasty league as well?
First off, the Jets have made their decision. I've heard they're going to take a kicker. So
that would not shock me the way the Jets operate.
But actually, it seems like they're going to go in on Zach Wilson.
Right.
And they may have to take what they get on Darnold, or does Darnold become the backup? I don't know what's going to happen with Sam Darnold, because it doesn't seem like, and we had Rich Catino of ESPN New York, who covers the Jets on the SiriusXM Fantasy Show, and he feels like a lot of people that Darnold has got short-shrifted, but there's really no value out there that they wanted to get. They're not going to get a first or a second round pick, it seems. So I think Darnold's going to go somewhere, but what are they going to take from him? Some sort of flyer. Oh, Sam Darnold traded for a 5th round pick, something like that. But back to my long-winded Scott Engel way of answering a question. Going back to number 3, Garoppolo, we've seen him have pretty good or sometimes outstanding games when he's been healthy. But it's clear that the 49ers threw all these draft picks out there because they have an eye, they're very high on one of those quarterbacks at number 3, or just want to have that opportunity to have that franchise quarterback, because you can make a case showing how important the franchise quarterback was when they lost the Super Bowl. If they would have had a better quarterback than Garoppolo in there, maybe they don't lose the Super Bowl. That was the weakness for them. So, and they're saying Garoppolo is their guy, but they could still trade him.
Right. I mean, if they draft Justin
Fields,
and Justin
Fields locked in with Cam, but still, we know Belichick is a Garoppolo fan. And what's going to happen here is it's very shaky on his value right now, because even if he stays and say maybe they bring in Trey Lance and do an Alex Smith Mahomes kind of thing where he starts for a year and then they get rid of him, and it's going to be interesting to see, because this is going to affect the value of Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, etc. What you're going to get from Kittle, but what about the other receivers that are in the picture there? If they're playing with a veteran quarterback, you figure it's good for them, but rookies come out nowadays. It's not like when it was back like in the 80s and 90s when a young quarterback would come in and sit behind the starter. You just don't see that as much anymore. Rookie quarterbacks. Ben Roethlisberger was really one of those who changed the game in terms of the rookie quarterback, where he came in and started right away and, led the team to the Super Bowl. He was a rookie when they won the Super Bowl, I believe. Mm-hmm. But I know for sure in his rookie year, I'll have to look this up after the show, but I'm pretty confident in that, is that Roethlisberger came in. It was one of those guys to prove that we had rookies come in and start right away now. He changed the NFL in that regard, him and one or two other guys. But so if the 49ers draft somebody, maybe they don't feel Trey Lance is quite ready, but how long are they going to wait on that? So,
Right.
We'll have to wait and see. It's very interesting. Everybody wants to mock up what they see, but what you mock up and what you see happen is always very often two different things. Let's talk about Mac Jones.
Yeah, no, I mean, go back on Roethlisberger for a second. His rookie year, 2004, 13 starts. The team went 13-0 in those starts. He had 5 game-winning drives, completed 66% of his passes, 17 touchdowns to 11 interceptions back in 2004. So, yeah, he hit the ground running.
Super Bowl
with
his second year, and I think I didn't do that correctly because they beat Seattle, and I try to tune that out in my head.
But, I mean, Russell Wilson walked in and started, and he wasn't even a first-round pick. Same with Dak Prescott. So there are quarterbacks who walk in and start from the very beginning. For the most part,
the rookie quarterbacks get the chance to start right away now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Trevor Lawrence is going to start from day one. If the Jets draft Wilson, he's going to start from day one. It's really a situation where whoever San Francisco decides to draft at 3, if he plays well enough over the summer, in July and August, you may see Jimmy Garoppolo on the move at that point in the season. Now, you mentioned,
or even post-draft,
right? At some point, as soon as they feel comfortable, because San Francisco has designs on winning. This is still a good team that was destroyed by injury last season. If they feel whoever they draft can keep them, that they could rebuild while contending at that position, then that's something they'll do. Now, Scott, you mentioned Mac Jones. You've mentioned Trey Lance, 2 other young quarterbacks, and now you have the Atlanta Falcons sitting at number 4. If you are in charge of the Falcons, are you drafting Matt Ryan's replacement? Are you trading out of that pick? Or are you getting Matt Ryan more weapons to make one more run?
I think Matt Ryan has enough weapons in terms of the passing game. Julio Jones is 33 years old, according to studies done by Mike Taglieri of Fantasy Pros. Usually 33 is maybe the final year where a guy plays at a high level. So, at wide receiver, 32 is not old for a wide receiver necessarily at 31. So you get one more year out of Julio Jones. You get Calvin Ridley. Let's see what happens at tight end. I think what that team needs to do, though, is they still don't have an answer in the running game. And you don't want to take a running back at number 4. I could see them trading back and, maybe taking one of those high-end sort of running backs. They're not going to trade back with Carolina because they play in the same division, but they could trade back with Denver, and Denver could be in the market for a quarterback, or maybe even would New England trade up. It's not something you see Belichick usually do, but he's got to rebuild this team quickly.
That's the interesting move, Scott. I was going to say it. You beat me to it. I mean, you said Belichick doesn't do it often. But if Belichick likes Mac Jones or he likes Trey Lance and he's sitting there at 4, or Justin Fields is still sitting there at 4, does Belichick make the move? And now you have Cam Newton for a couple of games, and then he hands the reins over to the young kid?
I don't know. Cam Newton, that's just going to spur him more. I mean, he wasn't surrounded by anything last year, and we talked about this. He had to come in learning a new offense and a new team under very unusual circumstances. There was COVID and there was everything else. But if you get a chance to get a franchised quarterback, I think you have to take it. So, and Cam is only on a 1-year deal. That's the other thing too. And Belichick, it just pains him. It pains him that that they didn't make the playoffs last year. He wants to get instantly back into contention, but Denver may be more aggressive here. So it'll be interesting to see if the Falcons trade back, because one thing I think they need is the support of a quality running game to help Matt Ryan. I don't think they have to worry about the quarterback of the future just yet, because Ryan could have a good year or 2 left.
Yeah. Are you surprised the Miami Dolphins are traded back and are kind of going with Tua for another season? I mean, there was a lot of talk of them either drafting a quarterback. We know they were in on the Deshaun Watson talk, but I think that's all kind of fizzled away because of Watson's off-the-field legal issues. So are you surprised Miami is going to, most likely it seems at number 6, stick with Tua and add pieces there?
Yeah, it seems like they're still in on Tua. They want to give him a chance. He didn't start right out of the game. It was unusual year for rookies. They want to get him playmakers. So, I saw Peter King making some interesting points about how the first trade made sense, but why did they have to do that again? And the reason why they do it again, they want to get probably Jamar Chase at number 6 or one of those other top wide receivers to get him playmakers. Because outside of Devontae Parker, who did he really have? Look at the Sam Darnold situation. It's got to be surrounded by playmakers. Darnold didn't have the coaching, and he didn't have the playmakers. You have the coaching in Miami. Now you need the playmakers. Somebody other than Devontae Parker has to be able to catch the football. So Miami could, and they need, I don't know, maybe they're in on Myles Gaskin. Maybe they're not. Maybe they want to draft one of the top, prime running back a little bit later on. Or they might draft 2 pass catchers. They want to be in prime position to get that playmaker on offense. So I understand what they did. The Miami Dolphins are going to be very interesting to watch over the next 5 years, real and fantasy-wise, because this team they have a winning culture for the first time, and I don't know how long it's been since the Miami Dolphins, have had a winning culture. I think it's like the 1990s. They made some playoff pushes, but they've been mired in mediocrity for the most part of this millennium. Right. So things are turning around there, and things should turn around fantasy-wise. It wouldn't shock me to see Tua come out and play really well this year.
No, you got to add those pieces. Carolina
Don't forget about him in a Superflex.
No, definitely not, actually. Carolina Panthers, number 8, another team. Scott, we could see, obviously, Jacksonville at 1, the Jets at 2, San Francisco at 3, Atlanta or somebody trading up at 4, and Carolina at 8. 5 quarterbacks going in the first 8 picks of this draft, potentially, if the Carolina Panthers also decide to move on from Teddy Bridgewater and bring in a quarterback.
Yeah, Bridgewater is good enough to lose with. So, even though he went 5-0 with the Saints 2 years ago, I think he's ideally not even wanted as a starter. I could see the Panthers trading up to, well, they can't trade up, really. I mean, who are they going to trade up with?
Right.
Would Cincinnati deal back? I don't think so. Maybe they want Jamar Chase themselves or, a really good offensive tackle. So, the Dolphins are where they are at number 6, and you're not going to trade up to get to number 7. So they're going to have to hope one of those 5 falls to them. And if they do, I think they take one of those quarterbacks. With all the legal issues surrounding Deshaun Watson right now, you can't trade them. But is this the team that says, okay, let's trade a later draft pick for Sam Darnold and have Darnold and Bridgewater battle it out?
I mean, that is a possibility. I heard a rumor here in the New York area on the radio of Darnold to Denver to battle it out with Drew Lock. I heard that's very
possible. But I think it's very clear that no team views him as a surefire, salvageable piece.
Right. No, I agree. If they did, I think they would have already made the move for him.
Already made the move. Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for the kid. I mean,
the Jets coaching staff ruined him, in my opinion.
It was the coaching staff, the front office, surrounding him with no playmakers, and that's the thing with the Jets. They're going to be interesting to watch because they have all those draft picks. They need playmakers for for whoever they're going to draft there, because we've seen Corey Davis, and I love Steve Smith on the NFL Network. He said this guy only stepped up when he knew there was going to be a payday out there.
It's interesting.
And Denzel Mims, a lot of local optimism on this guy, and that he could end up being a number 1 NFL wide receiver, but still it's a lot to ask of a second-year player. I think they need to get one more playmaker in the passing game. To me, if I was Joe Douglas, I'd get creative I trade back a few spots. I'd give Darnold another shot, and I'd draft Kyle Pitts. But I don't see the Jets doing that. And the Jets and other teams have set precedents now. It's going to be interesting to see what teams do in terms of drafting because, now the price is a lot higher to trade up than it was a few years ago in the draft. You got to give up multiple first-rounders to get those franchise quarterbacks. And, again, I go back to saying, I told you Russell Wilson wasn't going to get traded because it's so difficult to trade a franchise quarterback. When you have a quarterback like that, you're just not going to give it up. You'll deal with the nonsense if you consider it nonsense what Wilson has done. I don't necessarily consider it nonsense. It's another conversation, just using verbiage there. But look at how everybody's scrambling to get a franchise quarterback in the draft because they're so hard to come by. That's why the Seahawks have to make it work with Russell Wilson. You want to make it work with your franchise quarterback. That's why the Texans were digging in there for a while and saying, this is our player.
Yeah. And now they're in a situation in Houston where, Deshaun Watson's kind of unmovable at this point.
Look how valuable it is. Look at the package that the Bears offered the Seahawks that Pete Carroll turned down. But the fundamental flaw with that all along is the Bears can't offer the Seahawks anything in return that includes a quarterback. So basically, all these Bear fans wanted to get Russell Wilson, but it made no sense for the Seahawks because it would just flip the quarterback void from Chicago to Seattle. And a lot of people missed that point.
Right. Seattle does that. Now they're in the same position as Chicago, and they'd be starting Andy Dalton at quarterback this year.
Yeah, and they've already traded multiple picks for Jamal Adams. They have no currency really to get into, that position where Miami was.
Right. All right, folks. We are just about out of time here on the King and Pocket Aces show. Make sure you go back to our YouTube channel or you ever listen to our podcast. Check out all the episodes by Scott and I or any of the other great content on Rotoballer Radio. And head over to rotoballer.com, the free pages, the premium package, the promo code KING, the promo code ACES. You know the routine. We've said it throughout. Scott and I are with you every single week, aren't we, Scott?
Yes, and don't forget, rotoballer.com/FFPC to get into high-stakes fantasy drafting right now.
So take advantage of that offer. Okay, set your lineups, finish up your drafts, get ready for the waiver wire. Major League Baseball knocking on the door this week, so that's going to be fun for all of us. Scott and I will be talking about the Mets on the side pretty much all season long. Guys, stay smart, stay safe. We'll see you next time right here on the King and Pocket Aces.